Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd and I just watched the video The Romulan War Part 1, and this is a Star Trek fan production. It's in the form of a documentary showing us the Earth-Romulan War, which happened just before the formation of the Federation, and this is what we probably would have seen in Star Trek Enterprise if it hadn't been cancelled. And it's one of the biggest missed opportunities that we never got to see because it's something often talked about, the Romulans being the biggest, oldest enemy of the Federation, even predating the Federation, and we never got to see any of that. And in general, we never really saw the Romulans as a scary villain. Like, they showed up once in a while and everybody kept talking about how dangerous they are, but we never really saw the Romulans being very scary in a lot of places. And so this video actually managed to do that. It actually fills that little gap, that hole of something interesting which we never got to see, something that was only ever referred to, and it probably even did it better than what Enterprise would have done if it hadn't been cancelled. I think this video might actually be better than what we would have got in that show, for a few reasons. First of all, the CGI in this video is absolutely excellent. It's almost on the same level as what we saw in Enterprise. Like, they created whole new scenes of starships looking like the NX-01 and other types, all kinds of Romulan ships of new designs we never saw before, similar to other designs, as well as the designs we did see, and they created brand new special effects which look almost as good, almost as realistic looking as the ones we saw in Enterprise. And so this was excellent work, and they did also reuse a lot of footage from the show, like all kinds of bits that are recognized from the show, as well as from all kinds of other movies and other shows, and that's okay in my opinion. I mean, this way they managed to enrich it even more than what would have been possible if Enterprise hadn't been cancelled. If it was in the actual show, they wouldn't have been able to borrow footage from all kinds of other movies as this fan production is doing, and so that would have been a limitation, even though I do think, Star Trek often recycled its own footage, like all kinds of ship explosions and special effects from all kinds of other episodes. They often recycle them, and also I remember in an episode of Voyager they reused some footage from a movie called Event Horizon, which I guess might have been owned by the same company at the time, so they were allowed to use it. So Star Trek often did that, and they often reused the same kind of footage of planets and stuff. So Star Trek was always recycling stuff, but they probably wouldn't have been able to take footage from a variety of all kinds of different movies as this documentary is doing, and I think it adds a lot, it enriches it, and it's something that wouldn't have been possible in an official production, and so this is a good thing. This actually makes it look better. Now, some people might get distracted because they recognize the footage. Some bits are from Stargate Atlantis when they show nukes falling on a planet, other bits are from Battlestar Galactica, and all kinds of little bits from all kinds of other movies, and so maybe it's a little bit distracting, but you have to kind of roll with it. You have to simply disconnect with everything and simply accept everything they're showing you as part of this story, and then I think it works. And it reminds me of what I used to do. I used to do a lot of parody edits of Star Trek TNG mostly, and oftentimes I was creating brand new stories out of existing footage, and a lot of times I needed something which did not exist in all of Star Trek, and so then I took it from all kinds of other movies. I even used that same footage that I saw in this video of nukes falling on a planet from Stargate Atlantis. I remember I used that specific clip as well when I wanted to show, the Enterprise firing torpedoes at a planet and hitting cities and stuff. And so I used to do that myself as well to enrich my own stories, to add some special effects which I didn't find in Star Trek itself. So I'm personally totally okay with that. So even though they do use footage from all kinds of other places, they do it in a way that seems believable, that fits the situation, that ties well with each other. The editing is excellent in my opinion, and their new footage is also excellent. The special effects are top notch, just as good as the ones we saw in Enterprise, and also the acting and the costumes and everything also almost perfect. I can't say it's the same level, the makeup is not as professional as in the shows, but it's close enough in my opinion, and it's totally possible to get invested into this story, and the acting is good. And also I especially liked the Romulan leader, who was they made him like the Emperor in Star Wars, which I really liked. I'm a big fan of the Emperor, so I like to see something like that, and I think it fits the situation. The Romulans are a dictatorship, they are an empire, and so I thought it was cool to have, to finally see a Romulan leader, and he's scary and he's evil and all of that, so I love that. And this also finally shows the Romulans as an evil empire, which we didn't really see that much. We never really saw that much of Romulan politics or Romulan leaders. only a little bit once in a while. So here they finally show it in a good way. And also in all the battle scenes, they managed to make the Romulans actually scary and to seem like a big threat. And they introduced all kinds of new abilities, new technologies that we never saw before in all the other shows. And I thought that's very interesting. That felt fresh. It felt like something new, even though it's a prequel. Yet we see all kinds of things we didn't see before. And so we basically see the Romulans have some kind of weapon that can take over the computer system of other ships and to disable them, or even to take over them and to turn them against each other. And I thought it's really cool. It reminds me of all kinds of strategy games I played as a kid, and sometimes you would have that ability to convert the units of your enemy to your own units or to attack each other and stuff like that. I remember that in Age of Empires, when you could send those wizards to convert people on the other side to be on your side. And also in the old game Dune, you had one of those factions had a weapon which can convert units of the enemy to be your units, and that was always very cool. And so we see something like that here, and so I absolutely love that part when they show that the Romulans have that kind of weapon that can take over a computer system of the enemy and take over their ship. And also it has no problem continuity wise, because we can simply assume that Starfleet found a way to defend against that in the future, and so that's why it didn't work later on in the future. And it also can be used as a neat excuse to explain the technology we see in TOS, and that's something I talked about in a theory video I made, in which I tried to come up with an excuse to explain how come the computer technology in TOS seems to be kind of primitive, you know, the computer talking slowly and very robotically, and a lot of things being done manually. And I suggested a theory to explain that by saying that maybe it's done deliberately in order to prevent hacking of the ship from the outside. And I even suggested the Romulans specifically. I said maybe because the Romulans have the ability to hack into their computers, that's why they have to keep everything separate, they have to disconnect systems from each other, and they have to do a lot of things manually. And that's why we see them often using those disks or tapes, as they call them, to transfer information from one station to another. And they often used paper to write things instead of just computer pads. And so I suggested the theory that maybe they deliberately made things simpler so that the Romulans or other enemies wouldn't be able to spy against them or hacking into their system and all of that. So all those limitations we saw in TOS could have been explained away. So anyway, that was a theory I invented to kind of make up excuses to explain the visual primitiveness of the TOS era. And so I suspect maybe they'll do the same thing in this documentary. Later on, maybe they will say that Starfleet deliberately changed their technology so that the Romulans cannot hack them, so that they'll be defended against them. So I think that will be a very neat explanation. I hope that's the case in the next few parts. And I think continuity-wise, this fan production did a very good job paying attention to all the details. Nothing that they show contradicts anything we've heard in the other shows, and yet they managed to add new things as well. And it makes it much more exciting, much more unexpected, much more epic, at the same time as fitting the simpler descriptions we heard in TOS, for example, and the other shows. And also there was a potential big mistake between TOS and Enterprise, because in Enterprise Season 4 they already showed us the alliance of Earth with other powers who all kind of united against the Romulans, and yet we know that the war with the Romulans was called the Earth-Romulan War, not Earth and Allies Romulan War. And so that seems to be kind of a small contradiction. Why was that war called that? Why only Earth and not an Earth Alliance or something? We do know the Federation did not yet officially exist. It only started in 2161, and this was a few years before that. And yet in Enterprise we saw that a lot of species already made an alliance with Earth. And so this fan movie actually explains that as well, because they show that the Romulans managed to scare the other planets into retreating from this conflict, because their technologies was more effective against the other species, especially the Vulcans, because they were familiar with their technology. And yet the Earth ships were relatively more protected because they were using different technology that the Romulans were less prepared for. And so the Romulans actually managed to scare off all the other species, and then Earth was mostly doing all the fighting against the Romulans. And then it makes sense why it was called the Earth-Romulan War, and also we get to see the nuclear battles between them, that they're nuking each other's planets and all of that. And it's really epic, you know, millions of people getting killed, and they finally show the Romulans as being evil, which explains why, you know, some of the crew members in TOS kind of hated the Romulans. You know, there was that guy who was bigoted against the Romulans. Well, now we see why. Now we see that the Romulans actually slaughtered millions of innocent people. then it makes sense that people hated them even centuries later. And even in Star Trek Picard, when we heard that a lot of people in the Federation didn't want to save the Romulans, now it seems much more plausible, because now we see how evil the Romulans were and the kind of atrocities they did against the Earth colonies and all of that. So now it kind of makes sense why people hated them so much. There was kind of racism against them even in TNG by a lot of people. You know, there was that guy who had to pretend he's part Vulcan and not part Romulan because he was afraid he wouldn't be accepted in Starfleet because of that. So this video actually shows us the Romulans as being evil and nasty and scary and dangerous, and so that explains a lot of things we saw in the other shows. So I think this might be the best Star Trek fan movie I ever saw, and this is only part 1. I'm really hoping it will keep up the same quality and maybe even get better. There was also kind of a mystery they set up, that the Romulans are searching for something in archaeological ruins, that they're looking for something, so that might be interesting. Maybe Iconian technology, maybe some kind of technology to help them rule the galaxy, so that would be my guess. We do know that eventually it was found in the time of TNG, that they found an Iconian planet in the neutral zone, so maybe that's what the Romulans are looking for. And so this is very kind of curious mystery that they're setting up, and this is part of the story as well, and I'm really waiting to see the next part. So let me know what you think and we can discuss it in the comment section below. Also check out my other videos. I have a playlist of theory videos in which I invent all kinds of technical explanations for things we see in Star Trek, and I also have a playlist of my own fan fiction set in the Star Trek universe, my own ideas, my own stories that I invent. I also have another channel with a lot of compilations and parody edits of Star Trek and other movies. All the links are in the description below. And let me know what you think in the comments below and we'll discuss it, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.